Ross Tucker, Westwood One CBS sports analyst and former offensive lineman. The Ross Tucker Football Podcast is a must listen, and you can find him on social media I think I said Ass Ross Tucker NFL. That might work too.
Yeah, no problem, Dan. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Okay, give me your head scratcher last night.
Ooh, I got a couple of them, I guess. I think it's a little bit of a head scratcher that the Houston Texans gave up as much as they did for Will Anderson. And I think what happened, look, I love Will Anderson, Dan, but that's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, the 33rd pick is essentially another first-round pick. Next year's first-round pick. We usually don't see teams give up that much for a defensive player. I mean, if it's one thing for a starting quarterback or a franchise quarterback, but for a defensive player, and my read on that, Dan, is always the same. When I see GMs like Joe Douglas for the Jets or Nick Caserio for the Texans starting to give up future draft picks like they're doing, it usually means they think there's a chance they're on the hot seat and they need to win that year. And I don't really blame them, right? I mean, who cares about next year's first round pick if you're fired, if you're not there anymore? But the more teams give up future picks, the more I think that general manager wonders what kind of footing he's on for that franchise.
But you have a coach, D'Amico Ryans, who's just starting there. Nick Caserio has been there as the GM. So do you have, conflicting interests there of you got a coach who just started with a 6-year deal, and does he want to give up draft capital next year for an edge rusher here?
It's a terrific point, Dan, which is why most good organizations try to have those two positions aligned, because now you've got your two decision makers, and they'll say all the right things that they're on the same page, but they're not on the same timeline. If you're not on the same timeline, you can't possibly be on the same page because you have different interests in mind when you're making some of these decisions. I think we saw that from the Houston Texans last night.
But also people have to remember Carolina traded up to get Bryce Young. If that doesn't work out, you're really in trouble because you failed with the number 1 overall pick and you had to trade up with the Bears to get that number 1 pick.
Well, and the thing I keep thinking about is think about the Houston Texans. I think everybody believes they wanted Bryce Young and would have rather had Bryce Young. I mean, that's all-time bad process by the Texans to make it pretty clear they were going to fire Lovie Smith before the last game last year. And then Lovie goes out and wins and gives them a parting gift. I mean, that could be franchise altering.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of questions about Bryce Young other than the size. There were people that were very concerned about CJ Stroud. I mean, that one loss, or in this case, win by the Texans could be franchise altering for a decade or more.
I thought the Jets failed Aaron Rodgers last night because it's already a top 5 defense. You're not winning by your defense in the NFL. It helps to have somebody who can stop somebody when you need to stop. This is the new NFL, or this is the way it is. I would have gone after a tight end or one of those wide receivers. They got scooped because it felt like they were going to take an offensive lineman. But give me the strategy behind what the Jets did with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Dan, Jets fans are mad at me, but honestly, this is why the Jets are the Jets. I mean, there's a lot of bad here. First of all, I thought they had way too much leverage to give up what they did for Aaron Rodgers. Are you kidding me? I mean, a 1 and a 2, and you flip picks, which they didn't think was a big deal. It was a big deal last night that they did that pick for $60 million for a guy that might only play 1 year. All that for the right to pay Rodgers, and the Jets fan, he's going to restructure. He's not taking less, bro. I promise you he's not taking less. Restructure is for cap purposes. It's not less money. And so here's the other thing, Dan. There are certain organizations, and you know this, they just have loose lips, man. Every single mock draft had the Jets taking Broderick Jones at 13. Every mock draft, even with mock drafts where Skoronski was still available or Darnell Wright was still available, everybody and their brother knew the Jets wanted an offensive lineman, and knew they liked Broderick Jones. You can't have it that way, Dan. You can't, first of all, you can't have that obvious a position of need. Secondly, you can't let everybody know who you want, because then what the Steelers do? Steelers went from 17 to 14 with the Patriots. They only had to give up a 4th-round pick. They went right in front of the Jets and took the guy the Jets were going to take. There's 0% chance the Jets were going to take Will McDonald IV over Broderick Jones. They got scooped. They got beat by the Patriots. They got beat by the Steelers. They got beat by the Packers in that scenario.
They should have traded down after that. If you're not going to get the guy that you want there, trade down, and then maybe somebody falls to you. But I would have grabbed another wide receiver, or I would have grabbed a tight end here. Get somebody who helps you right now, and you still have needs with your offense. They didn't have a good night.
Or even Dan, think about like the Jaguars, right? They lost Jawan Taylor in free agency. Cam Robinson suspended. The Jags traded down twice in the 20s and still got Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. So the Jets could have done something like that. Now, in fairness to the Jets, it takes 2 to tango. Somebody has to want to move up, right? Like you can't just trade down just to trade down. Somebody has to want to move up to 15. But I just thought it was really poor process by the New York Jets. And now I think they're short at least one guy up front.
Yeah, and I know they have cap space. This has been mentioned to me that they can go out and get somebody, but they could have gotten somebody last night. We're talking to Ross Tucker, Westwood One CBS, NFL and college football analyst. Did the Cowboys get scooped last night?
Yeah, I feel like this happens to them all the time. I mean, just the fact that I can't decide whether they were really discussing who they were going to take that long, because should you ever be in a point where you have to take the full 10 minutes and they showed McCarthy and Jerry Jones with 45 seconds left still talking, and then they put it in and Stephen Jones, it looks around, he's like, okay, it's time to clap, guys. It's time to do the fake clap. The fake clap is hilarious to me. Can we organize this a little bit more? Can we have somebody else initiate it? The fake clap, like they're thrilled that they got Mozzie Smith. Like that's the guy they want. I think everybody believes they wanted Dalton Kincaid. Yeah. They wanted a tight end to be able to stretch the middle of the field for Dak Prescott. They need to replace Dalton Schultz. But the Cowboys are another. I'm actually amazed that the Cowboys draft as well as they do, considering how often it seems like people have a pretty good feel for what they're going to do. I mean, sometimes they just get lucky. I mean, the Micah Parsons thing, they wanted a corner at 10, a couple of years ago, but the corner J.C. Horn and Surtain went off the board. So the Eagles moved up for Devontae Smith. The Cowboys kind of lucked into Micah Parsons. The Dak Prescott year, the Cowboys wanted Paxton Lynch in the first round. Even at the top of the 4th round, they wanted Connor Cook. I mean, the best picks the Cowboys make are when they don't get the guy they actually want. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
I know. But I there's no way. Now, I know that they had problems stopping the run, but if you're Jerry Jones, you love to have shiny toys, and he would love to have, if it's a tight end or a wide receiver, whatever it is. I thought, they I think they were caught. It was like, oh my God, wait, Buffalo did what? And now all of a sudden, I don't know. Who are we taking? I don't know. Whoever we take, let's applaud and act like it's the guy that we really wanted.
And you know what, Dan? This is because some organizations are better at this than others. It's never good if you go into the draft with a glaring need, like the Jets had on the offensive line, like the Cowboys have at tight end. You got to have somebody that is good enough at that position. You have to have a baseline starter at that position. So it's not like you're telegraphing what position you would like to select a player. Now, look, there's a lot of good tight ends this year, so I'm sure the Cowboys will take one in the 2nd or 3rd round or whatever, but it's still not good to have that huge hole. Back in the day, teams would always have one starter left. Oh, we'll just take a guy in the 1st round. You can't do that anymore.
Poll question is, who goes first today or before the other one, Will Levis or Hendon Hooker?
That is a good one. I would not be surprised if it's Hendon Hooker. I felt bad for Will Levis last night, but I'm not that surprised. I mean, Dan, we did a live mock draft like a week ago on my YouTube page, and Will Levis didn't get drafted. I mean, there was only 3 teams that were definitely going to take a quarterback. And as you went through it, you knew Bryce Young was one, okay? So this is what I said. Dan, I compared Will Levis to Kmart, okay? And here's why, right? If you wanted a polished pocket passer, you're not taking Levis, you're going to take CJ Stroud. If you wanted like the high upside, the potential, the arm and the speed and whatever, you're going to take Anthony Richardson. I felt like Will Levis was stuck in the middle, which is kind of where Kmart was, right? Like my dad's a sales guy. He told me, Ross, if you want the least expensive thing, you go to Walmart. If you want something a little bit nicer, you go to Target or maybe Target, Dan, as you call it, Target. But that's why Kmart went out of business. You don't want to be in the middle in life. Will Levis got stuck in the middle, and that's why he dropped precipitously.
Explain to me the Colts going all in on Anthony Richardson with number 4 and then saying, hey, don't expect him to be Superman right away.
Well, this is all about Shane Steichen. And I do the Eagles preseason games on TV. Heck, I'm here in Philadelphia right now doing the draft for them. Shane Steichen the last 2 years had Jalen Hurts. And I really think, Dan, talking with these guys, once you have a quarterback that's a big-time running threat as a play caller and play designer, it is so hard to go back. You know what I mean? It's like once you know how much easier that makes things, once you see the world that opens up, man, it's hard to go back. And I think Steichen feels like he has the template with Hurts, which is maybe in year 1, you settle Richardson in the first few games, you play Minshew. Then when Richardson comes in, maybe it's a heavy ground-based attack like the Eagles were in 2021, but you have the belief that you can develop him if he's the right kind of kid as a passer, which is obviously exactly what the Eagles did with Hurts last year. Shane Steichen has the template to see how he's going to develop Anthony Richardson because he just did it with Hurts over the last 2 years.
And the Eagles stole the night, I think. That
it's unbelievable.
I mean,
yeah. And people, Dan, you work for them, so you're biased. Well, what do you want me to say? I mean, they got arguably the best player in the draft at number 9. And none of us really know the off the field stuff. I know this much. He reminds me a lot of Fletcher Cox in his prime. So he can just follow Fletcher Cox around. Plus two of his mentors, 2 of his older buddies from Georgia, Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis, they just took last year. Yeah. And Nolan Smith is a crazy high character guy. So he's got 3 teammates that can keep him on the right path. And then the Nolan Smith one, Dan, is interesting to me. I know he tore his pec, but it's bizarre that he was still there at 30. I don't know what the knock is. I think he's not a scheme fit for some people as an edge guy at 6'2", 238. But a lot of people thought the Eagles would take him at 10. I was floored that he was still available at 30. They got arguably a top 3 pick and a top 10 pick at 9 and 30.
Before I let you go, Lamar Jackson's deal. Did the Ravens do the right thing?
The Ravens absolutely did the right thing, and Lamar finally did the right thing. The Ravens essentially offered him this deal last year, Dan. I mean, they offered him the Jalen Hurts deal before the 2022 season. So I'm thrilled it worked out for Lamar. He saves money on an agent, but he took on all that injury risk, Dan. The whole I mean, what if he tore his patella tendon? Like what if he tore a quad? Like he took on all that injury risk to get $10 million more. I mean, instead of $250 million, he gets $260. He didn't even get more guaranteed. I mean, he gets $2 million more per year. It was not a great process for Lamar, but who cares now? All's well that ends well. And you know me, Dan, as a former player, all I want is for every guy to maximize the financial security they can get for their families from their gift. I talked to teammates of his that were so scared he was never going to be able to cash in this lottery ticket that he had earned. He gets the money. It's $185 million guaranteed. Nobody with the last name Jackson, at least in Lamar's family, will ever have to worry about money again. It's awesome.
Good to talk to you. Have a good weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. You as well, Dan. Thanks for having me.
That's Ross Tucker joining us from Philadelphia, Westwood One CBS Sports NFL and college football analyst, and the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.